My name is Jason and I'm an alcoholic.
Amen.
I was up in New York earlier this year and I have a couple of friends in the program up there and I said, that we're recording our speakers now, and I gave them the web address and I'm kind of regretting that now. But anyways, so I am an alcoholic and my name is Jason. My home group is the Vass group. We meet on Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock at the Baptist Church in Vass, bustling Vass. I guess I'm here to tell you what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I'm not a big fan of telling my story. I haven't done it a lot, and don't even go to a lot of speaker meetings. Not that I have anything against speaker meetings. I think speaker meetings are great, but speaker meetings to me are kind of like watching NASCAR. The crashes are what the most interesting part, so hopefully I won't crash too bad tonight. What happened? I'm the oldest of three boys to two loving parents who have been married since 1962, and we're high school sweethearts. And they met in Oklahoma, where they both went to high school and both went to the University of Oklahoma and graduated. And my father was a ROTC guy who then went into the Marines and got stationed in El Toro, California, and he was in the supply business in Vietnam, which is to say he was a lieutenant corporal in the supply chain. I don't know that he saw any action, but he did go to Vietnam. And I guess on one of his, either prior to leaving for Vietnam or on one of his visits, he and my mom perhaps renewed their vows in a certain way. And about 9 months later, I was born, and so I am the oldest of three boys. I was born in California and lived there until I was in the first grade. My father, after he got out of the Marines, had no intention about being a lifer. He took a job. He was looking for a job, and he found a job in a company that went around and helped other people learn how to be better salesmen. And so every 6 months we would move. And so prior to being 5 years old, I lived in Tampa, Louisville, Detroit, and San Francisco, besides Southern California. And when it came time for me to go into elementary school, my next brother had been born, and he decided that he didn't want to move so much, and so he got a different job, or he looked for different things to do. So I don't remember that very well, living in all those different places, although there's pictures. And I don't even really remember my next brother, who's 3.5 years younger than me, being born. I do remember kindergarten, and it was great. I remember the condominium complex that we grew up in Southern California, in Tustin and Orange County. I visited later as an adult, and the perspective is an interesting thing, because what were these huge hedges and these huge, tall, towering buildings was a pretty puny condominium complex in Southern California. But had friends and loved it, and went to kindergarten, and I can't really look back on that time in my life and think that anything was bad or traumatic or anything like that. My father had a great opportunity to finally get some jobs that were leading somewhere, and he actually got on with Burger King. And their headquarters are in Miami. So when I was 7 years old, my father got a job in the headquarters, and we moved to Miami. And that's really where I grew up, Miami, Florida. And I think that's my first memory of just really being pissed and not getting my way, and I was just crushed that I hadn't been consulted that we were going to move across the country. And we moved to Miami in August, which is just a horrible time to be in Miami. Had to change schools, and that's when I first can glom onto a feeling of being an outsider. And I always was one of those guys who tried to excel through school. You know, that was kind of a way to get attention. And my mother was a teacher, you know, back in the day. She had her degree in elementary education, so she was trying to create the Uber child, and she read all the books, and I was her petri dish. And I thrived on that, you know, and I did very well in school, and that was a way to kind of fit in. But I don't know that I really felt like I had best friends. I mean, I had neighbors in my neighborhood, and as I got older, and I'm kind of skipping ahead to being preteen, just about to become a teenager, I just didn't feel like I was part of a group. And I don't know, looking back, that there really was a group that I wasn't a part of. It's just that I didn't feel like I was a part of a group or the group. It's, you know, it seemed like everybody else got along fine, and I just wasn't invited in, or I didn't feel comfortable, or I don't know. It just didn't feel right. Didn't feel horrible. I mean, I wasn't thinking that I sad thoughts or anything like that. I just didn't feel like I belonged. We moved to Miami to a different neighborhood. This is around junior high school. Again, I really kind of threw myself into school. My youngest brother around this time was born. And, you know, my father's career was taken off. My mom had gotten into real estate in Miami, which is a career that she still has today. And when I was in junior high school, I didn't know where I belonged within the different groups that were there. And back when I was going to high school, you know, you had in Miami, Miami was an interesting place, is an interesting place, because it's a very southern town that was invaded by a bunch of Yankees, and a bunch of people didn't speak English, and a lot of people from New York City. And so there's some very distinct cliques in high school, and none of which I kind of fit in with. I mean, the folks that were the natives were very southern. I'm very proud to let you know that Miami was about as south as you can get. I would imagine the folks in North Carolina would take exception, would maybe disagree a bit, but those folks, they took it to extremes, and we'd walk down the hallway and in junior high school, and half the folks were speaking Spanish. You know, I lived in Miami at the time of the Marielito boat lift flotilla, so you had folks that, I mean, just the town got flooded with a whole Cuban population that came up in 1980. And there was a lot of tension in that town. And I mean, it was kind of interesting, and it was an interesting town, but none of these groups I really fit in. And I remember I was in junior high school, and there was a guy named Gillespie. And he said, "You want to go fishing? A bunch of us guys are going to go fishing." And I said, "You know, that sounds great." And I was too young to drive, but Alan could drive. And we loaded into his whatever, I don't know what it was, 1970 something Buick. And we drove out to the Rickenbacker Causeway, which is the bridge that links mainland Miami with Key Biscayne. And down along the side, there's a walkway. And he backed in his car. He opened the trunk. He put in his 8-track. And he popped open the beer, and Jimmy Buffett came on. And we went fishing. You know? And that's, I mean, I think prior to that, you know, and I have told my story a couple of times in the past, and I do remember that prior to that I would sneak drinks from my father. I would, you know, there'd be a party that my folks would have, and I'd have a little of this and a little of that and a little of this. But I don't think at 8 or 9 or 10 I was trying to kill some pain, or that I had that aha moment that alcohol has, I think, for us. But when I went out fishing with Alan Gillespie and the guys, I had it, you know? I was a part of that group. They wanted me there. I didn't care what they think of me. I felt equal to them. It was great. And that feeling of being at ease with myself and being at ease with you all is what I spent the next 20, 25 years chasing after with whatever I could find. I fell in with the group towards my last couple of years of high school as a guy and a girl, Richard and Mindy, and we could drink. I mean, we could drink, and I think I drank so much once. I think nobody told me that when you do the tequila with the lime and the salt, that the first one hurts, but then they get easier, and you should stop after a certain point in time. And I drank 3/4 of a bottle of tequila, and probably came very close to alcohol poisoning. And I was on the golf team in high school, and I remember 4 or 5 days later, we had a match, and I still was numb in part of my hands. And strangely enough, it's one of the best rounds I ever shot, but that's a different story altogether. But I hung very quickly after I found out that alcohol made me less self-conscious and made me a part of a group. I sought out those people who kind of really liked that to drink as well. Not people who just did it occasionally to go fishing with the guys, but people who were serious about it, who were serious about the drinking and the partying as kind of I had been about school. And it was also about this time that I realized that if I really busted my keister in school, I could make straight A's. But if I just did okay, I'd get straight C's and I'd still pass, which gave me time to do other things. So I started to do some self-balancing. I balanced my own portfolio, and I changed the time and the effort that took towards school and other things. I had to start spending some of my capital on partying, and I did so gladly. And so I hung with Richard and Mindy, and we drank our way through graduation. And I applied to colleges, was fortunate enough to get accepted into the University of Florida. Went up to the University of Florida. They had this thing called Fraternity Rush. They had caves at Fraternity Rush. I was 18 years old. The state of Florida had yet to change the drinking age to 21, so I could drink legally. And I really found some good people at that fraternity. And I really started to hit it pretty hard in college. So I joined that fraternity, and the balancing of my portfolio, the time that I spent towards school and partying, I had to rebalance, because the time that I was spending partying, I couldn't spend as much time at school, and there was nobody there to tell me I had to go to class. So I just kind of, I signed up every semester, and I'd show up occasionally to see what they were talking about. And in high school, I could get away with that and pass the classes, but I was getting D's and F's and C's now, but I was having a good time. And I remember having a conversation with my father on the phone and saying that, I felt like I was going to school for him and not for me. And, of course, this is a situation where this man was paying my free ride through college. And his answer to me was, well, you're the dumbass getting D's and F's, so I think you're going for yourself. And so I dropped out to find myself, and that's kind of a thing that I've done several times. I've always kind of trying to been searching, and maybe it was that time with Gillespie, I don't know, but I was searching for the real Jason. I was searching to find out what my real thing should be, what my next move should be. So I dropped out of school at the University of Florida, but they didn't have enough people to live in the fraternity house to keep the mortgage up. So they let me live in the fraternity house without going to school and pay a social membership. And I worked at Bennigan's. And I can still sing the Bennigan's Happy Birthday song. And that was truly the life. You have no class responsibilities. You live in a fraternity house, and you got enough cash to fund, jaunts to the coast or the Gulf of Mexico and stuff like that. I think deep down inside, you know, there's a lot of unhappiness, and there was a lot of not really liking who I am, and not really knowing how to be who I was, and walking into that person and having a self-acceptance of just how I'm built and what I'm all about. And my experience is the more you drink and perhaps do other things, the other outlets you may find, the less you have to deal with that. It doesn't go away, but if you drink enough, potentially you don't have to think about it. And that's, I think, what I was doing. I was petrified to pick a major because that meant that's what I was going to be. But I wanted somebody just to kind of sit me down sometime and say, here's what's going to happen for the rest of your life. Do this, do this, do this, do this. You'll be fine. And nobody does that. And if I'm being rigorously honest, if they had, I would have told them to go to hell. Because that's not who I am. Don't tell me what to do. But I desperately wanted somebody to tell me what I should be doing and how I should be able to figure this stuff out. So I dropped out to find myself, and after a year I found myself being a waiter at Bennigan's. And my grandfather had passed away back in Oklahoma, so I went back for the funeral. And while I was there, and my folks grew up in the college town from the University of Oklahoma, Norman, Oklahoma. So that's where I went back for the funeral. Well, while I was there, it was strongly suggested that maybe I might want to check into getting back into school and whatever. And so they accepted me back at the University of Oklahoma as a transfer with a 1.999999 repeating out into infinity, which is probably being very generous because I think they just needed some warm bodies and seats. Well, what I didn't bank on is that I had a grieving grandmother in need of a project, and I became her project. And so if I had a 7:45 class, she would call me at 7:15 just to see how I was doing. And I never missed a class because I had somebody there to kind of give me a little structure in my life. And that really ate into my drinking time a little bit for a period of time. And as a result, I crammed like 2 years of school in a year and a half and got out. So I got out of college. I mean, I'm still drinking. I'm still confused about who I am, but I got a degree, so I can check that one off my list. I got a degree in cinema studies, thinking I was going to be like the next Steven Spielberg or something like that. But I was too petrified to move to California because I thought I maybe wouldn't be good enough to actually do it, and probably wasn't disciplined enough to do it. So I moved to Orlando because they were building all these what I now know to be theme parks, but back in that time, they were building new movie studios at Disney and Universal. They were going to be totally functioning movie studios, and Hollywood was shutting down, and it was too expensive with the unions, and everybody was going to go to Florida, so I moved to Florida to be like on the front of this grand new movement. And when I got there, I realized that's kind of how they were selling it to the public. In the reality, they're building theme parks with a couple of sound stages so you could watch fake productions go on. So I ended up getting a job in that business of building theme park rides. And I did that for 10 years. And it was a good career, and I worked on some really interesting projects, and I met some interesting people. But I was also unsupervised and on my own, and I started to rebalance my portfolio again. So, and I think in 1980 I got pulled over for a DUI, and it was on St. Patty's Night, 1990. And they have all these BART stations, I think it is, where, you know, they have like the mobile vans all through Orlando. And these cops pulled me over, and they cuffed me, and they put me in the back of the cruiser, and they went to station to station to station. Well, it's St. Patty's Night, and it was packed. And there was a line, like at the theme park, at every single one. And they didn't want to wait. So they'd go to one, and then they'd go to the next one, and then they'd go to the next one, and it was too long, and they'd go to the next one. And they finally just took me to the jail at 33rd Street. And by the time I got there, I had enough time for the alcohol to get out of my system, and I blew underneath the limit. Because I was drunk when I left that place. I mean, I was really drunk. But I wasn't by the time I finally got and they did the blood alcohol test. So I was able to plead it down to reckless driving. The lesson I learned was don't ever go out and drink and drive. And that's a great lesson. Not because you might hurt somebody, but because it's inconvenient. So then what that meant was you buy your booze and you drink at home by yourself. Because then you're safe, you're not going to hurt anybody. And that's truly when I started to drink by myself. Because I would go to bars, and when I've heard people tell their stories, and they talk about being the one at the end of the bar stool, I would have been that guy had I not been pulled over for a DUI. But because I was, and because I was able to skate and keep my license, I just stayed at home and started drinking by myself. I'm drinking. It goes on and on and on. My career in Orlando kind of comes to an end because they don't have any more money to build any more new rides. And I'm lost and I don't know who I am again. So I try my luck at different things. And I went up to Atlanta in 2000 to work, 1999, to work for a .com that became a .bomb. And I got laid off. And I got introduced to different substances in Atlanta. And things really started to kind of accelerate in my life. And I'm just a lost puppy at this point. I mean, I'm just lost. And I couldn't find a job. I actually moved back here to Pinehurst, because my folk lived in Pinehurst by this time. I'm looking for a job. I'm being told at this time that, because I'm, I guess, 36, and I'm being told that, what's your next move? And what are you going to do now? You got to shake it off. You got to find something to do. And by the way, you may want to cut down on the drinking, because now I'm not by myself anymore. Now I'm living underneath my folks' roof, and people are noticing the amount that I'm drinking. My grandmother lives here in town, and she used to do ceramics. She's too old now to be able to do it. But when she moved out here, she brought her kiln. And so I'm hiding my bottles, and I've got these plastic vodka bottles, and I know she's not doing ceramics anymore, so I'm kind of putting them in the kiln, which, those things get up to 1,200 degrees to fire those ceramics. Then she, one day later, she went to go fire some ceramics. Unfortunately, they opened it up before they did install the bottles. But I'm looking for a job. I don't know what to do. I'm being told that maybe, I think at that time I was maybe suggested I might want to go to AA, and I didn't really listen. Because I was going to fix this, I was going to find a job, and everything was going to be fine. And I'm noticing here that as I have talked, I've defined myself by what I've done for a living. A lot. Because when I look back on who I was at that time, and if you were to ask me, who are you? I would tell you what I did, or who I knew, or where I've been. Because that's truly how I define myself. And I hate that about myself. That's perhaps too strong. But that's truly my story. It wasn't about my friends. It wasn't about any sort of inner peace. It wasn't about, I'm a guy that I enjoy gardening. That's how, I talk about myself today. I like my friends. I'm close with my family. That's how I define Jason today. But back in the day, if you want to know who I was, I tell you what I did. I wasn't going to tell you how much I made, because that was a little bit obnoxious. But I'd hint at it, because that's how I felt good about myself, and that's what I needed. That's how I wanted you to view me. Because if you knew the rest, you'd move on. I know that you would dislike me. You would move on. I was finally able to get a job with some former coworkers from Universal who were down doing a rehab, a retrofit, and an expansion of the Ritz-Carlton in St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands. So I had to ship basically my life on a carrier barge down to Charlotte Amalie and out of Jacksonville. Showed up 2 weeks later. Got down there on this island, rented a place, and became very apparent maybe 2 to 3 weeks in that I was unqualified for this job. I mean, I knew, I don't know if you've ever had been in a situation where you've taken a job and you just know the very first day that you're unqualified for it, you've talked yourself into it, and you just have no skill for it. Well, I knew that like within the first couple of weeks. The problem was that I was stuck on this friggin' island, like hundreds of miles from anything. I mean, all I had was a Ford Taurus station wagon and what fit in my suitcase, and I couldn't get off the island. So I hung with it for as long as I could, and it became worse and worse and worse, and some of the promises that were made to me in this job in terms of benefits didn't pan out, and I got pissy one day and I quit. I mean, that's what I did. I just quit. Screw them. And I had this amazing apartment that overlooked the entire bay where the cruise ships came in. And to my right, I could see Puerto Rico, and if I looked straight out on a clear day, I could see St. Croix. And if I craned my head to the left, I could see the British Virgin Islands. I mean, it was gorgeous. And the thing about the Virgin Islands, I guess it's still the same, I haven't been back, is that there are no blue laws. They want you to drink, because that's how they make their money, okay? And rum costs like $1 for a big old bottle, because they make it in the backyard. I mean, it's like nothing, right? And I didn't have a lot of money, but I didn't need a lot of money, because the booze was cheap. And I stopped eating. I mean, I just started drinking. And I remember the guy that I worked for, who was the one who hired me down there, he came by and he just had this look of disgust on his face, because I was just sitting there enjoying the view of the cruise ships coming in and watching the sunset and drinking my cocktail. And with no plans for what I was going to do the next day, except for maybe drink. And if you've ever drank that much consistently and you've not eaten, and I think I went about 3 weeks without eating and just drinking, your insides start to come out. And I didn't know enough about certain things, so I had a lot of pain and I couldn't sleep, so I started taking a lot of Tylenol PM, which is probably not the best thing to do to your liver when you're drinking all this alcohol. And anyways, I'm stuck on this island, and my folks are worried because I didn't have a telephone. There's no cell phones back in this time. And they sent my brother down to the Virgin Islands, my youngest brother, to try to find me. And somehow, my brother found me without even knowing where I was working. He just asked around. He probably asked around for the guy that kind of looked shaky who goes to the liquor store. And I was sitting in this room, this one-room apartment, and I just saw these steps. I looked over and I just knew it was his legs immediately. And he came and basically saved my life. So took me to the hospital. I went through the DTs, got me back to the United States, to the mainland, because I guess you are sort of in the United States down there. Finally went into rehab back in 2001. Was in rehab during 9/11. I was telling Beth that there was a guy in our rehab that we were convinced used to sneak out at night and get high and come back in because the security was really bad. And then one morning we were doing KP and he comes in and he says, "They're flying planes in the building, they're flying planes in the building." I was like, this guy got high again last night, So, I went through rehab and all that experience of 9/11. I went through the whole experience of 9/11 in rehab. I got out of rehab, didn't have any place to go except for home, which is my folks' house, and I came up here and I came into the program initially in 2001, and I see Neil and some other folks, AJ, and I got really well really quick, probably too well too quick. I was a guy at a meeting that after about 90 days, you probably should hear what I have to say, because I've figured this out and I want you to know that I know it. And I shared a lot, and a lot, and a lot. I was that guy. I mean, I know that now, but I had to demonstrate, if not to you, at least to myself, that I could talk it. But if I'm being rigorously honest, I do remember back in that time looking myself in the mirror and I'm saying, one of these days there's people who are going to figure it out that I don't really know what I'm talking about. Because I didn't. You can listen to people talk and you can kind of talk the program, but if you're not feeling it inside you, you're just kind of, you can get a stenographer in here and or an actor, and they can probably get it after a while. And that's what was happening with me, and I was convincing myself that I was good. I got a job in Charlotte. I moved to Charlotte. They don't do meetings right in Charlotte because they do meetings right in Moore County. People told me that when I moved, I should go and treat myself as if I was a newcomer. If you go to a new area, I did not do that. I should have. I asked people to be my sponsor. I asked a woman to be my sponsor, and I couldn't. I was shocked that she shot me down. I mean, I did everything probably wrong that you could do wrong that I was told not to do. And unsurprisingly, one night I was at a party hanging with people that I shouldn't have been hanging with because they were partying. And I said, F it, hand it over. And I was back out. And it's kind of an old chestnut in AA, but I'll just quickly say that yes, your disease is out there. Yes, it is doing push-ups. Yes, it does get worse. And in my experience, takes me places that I did not know were imaginable. I holed myself up yet again in my apartment in Charlotte. I drank and drugged myself out of a job. And they gave me a severance. I don't know why, because I didn't deserve it, but I took it. And I spent it very quickly on people who do not report their taxes, among other places. And I was very popular in that time with the people who enjoyed living that lifestyle as well, until I ran out of money and then they would never call me back. I was alone. I could no longer afford my apartment, so I started taking everything that I didn't really think I needed anymore to the dumpster and throwing it away. And everything else I packed into a Buick. And I had let that car sit out front so long because I ordered in from my friends. I didn't go out. So the car stayed there for so long that all the belts and everything had gone bad. And I didn't really recognize that had happened until I got on, I guess it was I-85, leaving town and leaving all my troubles behind me, and the car almost blew up with everything literally packed inside this that could fit inside it, to drive back down to Florida to go see my brother who had saved my life once before. I moved down to Florida. My first go around, I worked at the fresh market. I have to say it, I worked behind the fish counter, and back in that day when I was in the program, I was the fish guy. To this day, when Vass has its anniversary celebration, and I call Neil to say, is it okay if we borrow the tables and the chairs for the Vass anniversary? I said, Neil, it's Jason. And Neil gets lots of phone calls. He has no idea who I am. I say, Neil, it's the fish guy. He goes, hey, what's up? So I worked at Fresh Market. When I went back down to Florida, I got a job at Fresh Market again. I didn't have a car because that car finally blew up, and so I subsisted on public transportation. I took the bus. Eventually, I was trying to go to meetings. Didn't work. Didn't work for me. I mean, the meetings worked. I had a sponsor, but I wasn't working it. When I say it didn't work, I would show up for one, and then I'd go for 2 weeks not going, and then I'd go for a week solid, and then I would kind of dabble in, dabble out. Plenty of people offering to give me a ride, plenty of people trying to do service work. I always turned them down, because I was too proud. I'd ride my bike if I could. Had this job at the Fresh Market. Started drinking on the bus because there was a Walgreens I could get to early enough and get something to put in my backpack. Started off as the fish guy. They made the wise decision of making me the grocery guy stacking the glass pasta jars. And I was pretty drunk at work stacking the pasta jars. And I guess went too quickly around the corner with a shopping cart and knocked over basically, I don't know, half a aisle worth of glass pasta jars. And my boss went back and he smelled alcohol in my system and asked me to leave immediately. And I was embarrassed and I was drunk. And my brother had told me, if you can't stop drinking, I don't want to live with you because you're ruining my life. And I love my brother for that today because he was honest enough to say, you're ruining my life. So I went to rehab again, but this time I checked myself in. And prior to that, I went to detox because I had to go to detox. But this time, I took myself to detox. I was in rehab in Sanford, Florida for 4 months. After I got out, I called my folks. I said, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready to come back home again. Came back up here in 2009. Couldn't find a job. But I went to a meeting every single day. I started doing those things that the first time I moved away I was told to do. I got a sponsor immediately. Got a home group. Didn't have one of those before. It's a really neat idea. It worked for me. And Vass is my home group. And I'm there every Wednesday, I think, since 2009. I've missed 4 times. Other things that I've been told to do that I do now is I have a meeting schedule. It's my meeting schedule. I will be at those meetings, and if not, you call me because something's wrong. So I always go to those same meetings. I might add a different meeting. I might add some service work. But if there's a Sunday morning meeting at Aberdeen, or if there's a Wednesday night meeting at Vass, I'm at those 2 meetings, no matter what. And if not, I call somebody and let them know I won't be there and why. I sat down with my sponsor. I got a sponsor, Jack, and I've been through the steps before. We have not gone through the steps the way I went through the steps the first time. One of the things from my experience is even when I was in Florida this last time before I came back up here, is that I did have this sponsor down in Florida, and we didn't talk a lot, but I remember one night we went out and we had coffee, and I don't know what hit me, but there was parts of my 5th step that first time around, I just didn't talk about because I didn't think my first sponsor was ready to hear that stuff, that was really, I think, where my mind was at. So I sat down with this guy that I'd asked to be my sponsor, Scotty, and out of nowhere, just started laying all this stuff on him. And when I was done, he said, man, you're angry. And I'm like, yeah. And I was angry for the next 2 days because, I finally had talked about that stuff. I mention that to say that, if you're somebody, in my experience, who's been in the program and has come back, gone out and come back in, which is my story, that time you were in before, it's not wasted time. You don't count it when you pick up your chip. But I met some amazing people. I learned some amazing things. And I knew that this was the place that I needed to be. As usual, I spent too much time talking about drinking. I think what it's like today is I do my program, I work this program differently than I worked it before. I don't share as much. You guys have interesting things to say that help keep me alive, that if I'm talking, I won't hear it. That's something different for me. I really don't like talking all that much. It's kind of a sea change. I've gotten active. I've done service work. I'm active as my GSR for Vass, as well as on Intergroup. I didn't do that before. You guys told me that's what I should do. I didn't think that was a good idea. I went out. I got drunk. I did stupid things. I blamed other people. I've come back, and I'm here to tell you you're right. I'm open-minded. We had a meeting last night in Vass about how, and I didn't share really, I think what's on my mind right now, which is that I am so open-minded about things that before, I wasn't before. I mean, my life has changed because of this program, and back in the day I would try anything and do anything, and I was open-minded enough to do the things that would destroy my life. And so I'm trying to be open-minded about the things that will save my life. My life is good today. I'm 50 years old. I live in my parents' basement, right? In the same house lives my 98-year-old grandmother. So there's 3 generations of us living in this house. I mow the lawn. My house looks great. It's not my house, quite honestly, but this house looks great. I'm proud of that. I'm not embarrassed by that. I'm proud that I had parents that wanted to take me in. My folks are my best friends now, and that's as a result of this program. That's a gift that I never would have thought written down on a list as something you get out of this program. My parents are my best friends. My grandmother is like, well, we love it when my folks go out of town because we get to run the house by ourselves, and she truly is my very best friend in the world, and she's 98 years old. And I realize that every day is a gift with her because she's not going to live, well, she may live for another 10 years just to piss some people off, but, I would have never thought that today the greatest gift beyond being able to go to an AA meeting was the fact that I sat down and had, after dinner, I sat down and told my grandmother, turn her hearing aid up, please. And we sat and had dinner. And we talked, and I said, how was your day? And she said, oh, I got up, I watched Matlock, I took a nap, Because that's what she does. She tells me the same stories again. She's my buddy. My brothers, I love my brothers, I have, I'm blessed to have brothers and a sister-in-law and nephews. I mean, my family's very important to me. If you want to know who I am today, that's who I am today, I am a son and a brother and an uncle and a grandson and a friend. I have some truly meaningful relationships in my life today. Friendships. People that every Sunday, when I have the opportunity, I go out to lunch with this one friend of mine. And we sit, and she just takes my head and just kind of tightens it back on. And she says, okay, go ahead. And I mean, that's who I am today. I'm an alcoholic. I have no doubt whatsoever, because I've learned that, from experience, I cannot drink. I'm ecstatic that I don't have to drink today. I think that is the neatest thing in the world. I don't have to drink today. I don't have to. I don't want to. I mean, it's that amazing. I get these occasional times where I'm just like, I don't have to drink today. I mean, I can be at a party, anything. I have no desire to drink. It's not just that. I don't want to drink. I don't have to drink. I don't know what else to say. I'm living the life, and I appreciate you inviting me here. Thanks.